Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah, everybody's Ramadan is going well. And we're taking advantage of these precious moments that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. Okay, so juz number 13. So in juz number 13, we have a very poignant verse. قُلْ هَذِهِ سَبِيلِي أَدْعُو إِلَى اللَّهِ على بصيرة أنا ومن اتبعني وسبحان الله وما أنا من المشركين. So in this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that say to them, O Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that this is my way. I call to Allah. أدعو إلى الله. I call to Allah based on clear revealed proof. I and whoever follows me. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most exalted, and I am not those who associate partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in this verse, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is being told by Allah that declare to them, tell them that this is my path. The path that I have selected is that I call people towards Allah Azza wa Jal, and it's based on clear manifest proof. And that clear and manifest proof that is being mentioned is none other than the Quran. So from this we understand that the Quran, this is the ultimate source of guidance. So, and as long as a person follows the Quran, follows the ultimate source of guidance, then this person, inshallah, he will attain salvation in the hereafter, and he will be successful in this world. I mean, this is just the benefits of following the Quran and Sunnah. He will see success. That person will see success in this world, and that person will see the fruits of whatever he has done in this world for the sake of Allah in the hereafter. Wa subhanallah wa ma ana min al-mushrikeen. And then the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam goes on to say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is most exalted, and he is not from amongst those who associate partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Continuing on, this verse is verse number 108 from Surah Yusuf. Continuing on, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then speaks about, where is it gone? Let me just find it over here. Okay. وَمَا الْحَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا فِي الْآخِرَةِ إِلَّا مَتَاعٌ. وَمَا الْحَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا وَمَا الْحَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا فِي الْآخِرَةِ إِلَّا مَتَاعٌ. So in this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that that in the life of this world, and though the life of this world in comparison with the hereafter is nothing but meager enjoyment. وَمَا الْحَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا. So the entire verse is Allah يَبْسُطُ الرِّزْقَ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ وَيَقْدِرُ وَفَرِحُوا بِالْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَمَا الْحَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا فِي الْآخِرَةِ إِلَّا مَتَاعٌ. So this is from Surah Al-Ra'd, verse number 26, that it is Allah alone who extends abundant provision to whomever he so wills, and he alone restricts it. So rizq and sustenance, this is something that Allah Azza wa Jal has apportioned for each and every single individual. Whatever is decreed for us, we're going to attain it, we're going to get it. Yet those who disbelieve, they exult in the life of this world, through the life of this world in comparison with the hereafter is nothing but meager enjoyment. So وَفَرِحُوا بِالْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا. So the disbelievers, they become overjoyed at the various acquisitions they make in this world. وَمَا الْحَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا فِي الْآخِرَةِ إِلَّا مَتَاعٌ. But this worldly life, these worldly planes, come in comparison to the akhirah, is nothing but meager enjoyment. So mata', in this context, it means meager enjoyment. Now, mata' has a very profound meaning according to Arabic linguists. And mata', it means, mata' generally means belongings. But in this context, it's to show and it's to indicate something very small and insignificant and meager. So there was one grammarian by the name of Imam Isma'i. So Imam Isma'i, he was a very ardent student in the Arabic language, and he liked to see how the Arabs, they would use words that are found in the Quran in their original state, in their natural state. What happens at times that over years, certain words, they will lose their meanings, and that word is used for something else entirely. So Imam Ismail, he wanted to understand the natural usage of mata'. So he went to where the Bedouins were living, and the Bedouins, their language is generally untarnished. It isn't influenced by external things and by people who are visiting. And this is one of the reasons why the Quraysh, they would send their kids to the desert to live with the Bedouins over there. The Prophet ﷺ was taken in by Halima Sa'diyah, his foster mother, radiallahu anha. And one of the primary reasons for that is because the language of the Bedouins was untarnished. It was pure, and it was the original Arabic. And this was the custom of the Quraysh. The custom was that they would send their young kids to the desert so that their language remains intact. Because Makkah, this was a region where people from far and wide, they would come in, and during the Hajj season, and it's very likely that their Arabic was very unlike the Arabic that the Quraysh, they would speak. Hence, there was this possibility that they could pollute, and they could tarnish the language of the Quraysh, the pure Arabic dialect. So this was one of the primary reasons why the Arabs, they would send their kids to the desert to keep their language intact. Now, back to mata'. So there was a scholar by the name of Imam Ismail. I believe he was a 2nd or 3rd century scholar, grammarian, linguist, and he wanted to see mata' in its natural usage, that how the Arabs would naturally use mata'. So he stayed with this tribe, and he never asked them anything. He just wanted to stay with the tribe, and he wanted it to come generically. So he stayed with them for quite some time. And this dog that was spotted. So there was a spotted dog, and it came to this area where this Bedouin tribe was living, and a woman happened to be cleaning the dishes. She was cleaning the dishes with a very dirty rag. And while she was cleaning the dishes, she put this dirty rag to the side. So this dog saw this opportunity, and he rushed, he grabbed that dirty rag, and he ran off. He ran off with that dirty rag. And then he goes to this hillock, like an area which is elevated, and he sits on its haunches. So this woman, she cries out, and she says, "Ja'a al-raqim, wa akhadha al-mata' wa tabarak al-jabal." So I mean, just these 3 phrases, there is just so much eloquence in these 3 phrases, and there's so much articulation, and it really explains the linguistics of certain words in the Quran. So ja'a al-raqim. Raqim means a type of dog which has a distinct marking on its forehead. Ja'a al-raqim wa akhadha al-mata'. And this dog, he took my dish rag, and watabarak al-jabal, and then it sat on its haunches on top of a hillock. So he understood, Imam Ismail finally understood what mata' meant. That mata', it means it's a dirty dish rag. And this is the reality of this world. That this world, it's likened to a very insignificant thing. And the Prophet ﷺ mentions a hadith that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had value for this world, equivalent to the wing of a mosquito, then a kafir, a non-Muslim, would not receive a sip of water to drink. And this is the value that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has for this world, meaning that this world has no value to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is something that we have to come to terms with, that when we're in this world, yes, we have to earn in this world, and we have to follow the obligations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala so far as earning a livelihood. But again, it shouldn't be our primary objective. Our primary focus and objective is the hereafter and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is one of the reasons why fasting in the month of Ramadan is so important, because it really brings equilibrium in our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because throughout the entire year, we tend to become unfocused. We tend to become oblivious when it comes to following the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what fasting does, if anything, it refocuses us. It reinvents us, in a manner of speaking, to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to focus on Allah, and to understand truly what our relationship is with the celestial, what our relationship is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is one of the primary objectives of fasting, that it draws us away from the dunya, it draws us away from the world, and brings and diverts our attention to the hereafter. Continuing on, Surah Ibrahim, verse number, where are we? Verse number 6, Surah Ibrahim. Okay, so in Surah Ibrahim, verse number 6, وَإِذْ قَالَ مُوسَى لِقَوْمِهِ اذْكُرُوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ عَلَيْكُمْ إِذْ أَنْجَاكُمْ مِنْ آلِ فِرْعَوْنَ يَسُومُونَكُمْ سُوءَ الْعَذَابِ وَيُذَبِّحُونَ أَبْنَاءَكُمْ وَيَسْتَحْيُونَ نِسَاءَكُمْ وَفِي ذَلِكُمْ بَلَاءٌ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ عَظِيمٌ وَإِذْ تَأَذَّنَ رَبُّكُمْ لَئِنْ شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ وَلَئِنْ كَفَرْتُمْ إِنَّ عَذَابِي لَشَدِيدٌ. So verses number 6 and 7. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that, behold, when Musa alayhi salam said to his people, to Banu Israel, that remember the ni'mats, remember the favors, the bounties, the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon you when he delivered you from the house and tyrannies of Fir'aun. So the Banu Israel, they were oppressed. They were oppressed people, and they were an oppressed nation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them salvation by the hand of Musa alayhi salam, and they were inflicting upon you a most evil torment. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is reminding Banu Israel that this is what you were subjected to, that they were inflicting upon you a most evil torment. They were slaying your sons, and they were keeping your women folk alive in bondage. And in this, there was a great trial for you. وَفِي ذَلِكُمْ بَلَاءٌ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ عَظِيمٌ. There was a great trial for you from your Allah. And recall when your Allah, he solemnly proclaimed to you that if you give thanks for my blessings, then I shall surely increase them for you. But if you become grateful, then verily my torment is most surely severe. So in this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is reminding Banu Israel of the various favors that he conferred upon them. And that Banu Israel, they were very forgetful. Just as all humans are, we are forgetful. And we have to be reminded of the favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I've mentioned a verse that was similar to it, I believe 2 or 3 sessions back, where the psychology of human beings is that when we are in difficulty, when we are experiencing hardship, then we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But once that hardship is removed, then we go back to our ways. We go back to our previous ways, whatever we were doing before. So it's important that we continuously remember the favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon us on a daily basis, and we don't forget the favors of Allah. And this is what Banu Israel, they were guilty of, that they forgot the favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah gave them deliverance. Allah protected them by the hand of Musa alayhi salam. They were saved. But what did they do? They worshipped the calf. They forgot the favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is reminding them that do not forget the favors of Allah, that whatever graces, whatever favors that Allah has bestowed upon you, continuously remember these favors. Don't become oblivious from the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِذْ تَأَذَّنَ رَبُّكُمْ لَإِنْ شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ وَلَإِنْ كَفَرْتُمْ إِنَّ عَذَابِي لَشَدِيدٌ إِنَّ عَذَابِي لَشَدِيدٌ. And remember when Allah, he proclaimed to you that if you give thanks for my blessings, and this is another thing that we should keep in mind, that whatever favors Allah bestows upon us, we should give thanks as much as possible. And how do we give thanks to the favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Obviously, we can never give thanks to the favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but what this means is that we follow the injunctions and instructions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the letter. We refrain from the prohibitions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is giving thanks to Allah. وَلَئِن كَفَرْتُمْ إِنَّ عَذَابِي لَشَدِيدٌ. But If you become ungrateful, then my torment is most severe. And ungrateful means that not obeying the instructions and injunctions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not following the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So from these verses, we understand the importance of remembering the favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we remember the favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we should be appreciative and we should be more worshipful. If anything, this is what the favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala should do. It should make us more cognizant, more worshipful, that there is an afterlife, and we have to work for this afterlife no matter what, because in working for the afterlife, this is for our own benefit, and it is for our own salvation in the hereafter. So the best way to acknowledge the favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is being more worshipful. And being more worshipful doesn't necessarily mean that we put ourselves in a difficult position. What it means is that we can do the bare minimum. We can do the bare minimum in fulfilling our fara'id, in fulfilling our obligations. But most importantly, we need to stay away from sin. We need to distance ourselves from sin. And this is being appreciative when it comes to the ni'am and the favors and the graces of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon us. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us tawfiq and understanding. Inshallah, tomorrow we'll go over the 14th juz. Inshallah. 14th juz. Okay, yes. So 14th juz we'll review tomorrow. And if there are any questions, feel free to ask. So one question I received, if anyone wants to ask, then I guess I'll go first. So someone asked that, is it a requirement to complete the Quran in Taraweeh? No, it's not a requirement to complete the Quran in Taraweeh. It's a good thing to complete the Quran in Taraweeh, and it's not recorded from the Prophet ﷺ that he would complete the Quran in Taraweeh. It is a virtuous thing and a commendable thing to complete the Quran in the month of Ramadan, because the Prophet ﷺ, he would complete the Quran and review and revise the Quran with Jibreel alayhi salam each and every Ramadan. But completion in the month of Ramadan in Taraweeh, this is not a requisite, nor will a person be sinful, or a community will be sinful if they decide not to complete the Quran in Taraweeh. Let's see. Okay. Are there any other questions? There are, however, narrations for completing the Quran in Taraweeh from the Tabi'een. So we will not find narrations from the Prophet ﷺ, but we will find narrations from the Tabi'een, the students of the Sahaba. So the students of the Sahaba, they would complete the Quran in Taraweeh. Okay. Let's see, what else do we have over here? One of the scholars, contemporary scholars, by the name of Sheikh Bashar Awad Ma'ruf, and this is quite interesting. He's an Iraqi scholar, and he's done a lot of editing on Arabic books. So he mentioned that 9/10 of our turath, of our intellectual heritage, is still in manuscript form, and that hasn't even been brought out to light as of yet. So I mean, what we have available to us right now, this is just 1/10 of what's actually out there. I found this very interesting when I read it, because it's true that there are a lot of manuscripts that contain our intellectual heritage. I mean, we have 13, 14 centuries of of scholars just contributing to Islam, and they did all of this. They did all of this because they had this zeal to ensure that the heritage and the mirath that the Prophet ﷺ left behind, it reaches it reaches until the day of it continues till the day of Qiyamah. So I mean, whatever we have today, this is just a small portion. So these books of hadith that we have, the books of Islamic law, books of tafsir. I mean, there was one tafsir which is not available now, and it predated the tafsir of Imam Tabari. Tafsir al-Tabari is considered one of the greatest tafsirs that has been written by a classical scholar in the 3rd century of Islam. Now, prior to Tafsir al-Tabari, there was a tafsir by the name of Tafsir of Baqi ibn Makhlad. Baqi ibn Makhlad, he was from Andalus. He was from Andalus, present-day Spain, and he had written an authoritative tafsir, exegesis on the Quran. But unfortunately, it is not available. Although it's mentioned in numerous books that he had written a tafsir, he had authored a tafsir, and it was a very voluminous tafsir. He was a 2nd century scholar, but unfortunately, it is not found. And this is a huge issue. I mean, nowadays, Western universities, they do quite a number of them, such as Harvard, Princeton, Yale. They house a huge collection of Islamic manuscripts in their libraries, and people don't really have access to them. But one of the good things that they did is that they digitized a lot of these Islamic manuscripts. So whoever wants to do research on a particular topic, then they would have to go to the library and seek a digitized version of that particular manuscript. So like this, throughout the entire world, there are some ancient libraries that have contributed to preserving our Islamic heritage. One library was the library in Bosnia. So during the Bosnian War, when the Bosnian War took place in the 90s. So Bosnia, this is a region, the Balkan region, conquered by the Ottomans, and they're all a majority of that region is Muslim. So the Serbs, we know what they did and everything, and what kind of dhulm and oppression they subjected the Muslims to. But there's a very ancient library there by the name of, I believe, Khusru Beg library, and the librarians, what they did was, when this war erupted, they hid all the manuscripts. They hid all of the important manuscripts, and they made sure that these manuscripts were kept away from the Serbs so they don't burn them, because this is generally what happens, that whenever there's an issue, or whenever Muslims are oppressed, or wherever they're oppressed, the first thing that people do is that they just shred away, or they just destroy the heritage that the Muslims painstakingly compiled. So we see this in Baghdad, when the Mongols, the scourge of the earth, the Mongols, they took over, and when they conquered Baghdad, ultimately they were repelled by Saifuddin Qutuz, the Mamluk king from Egypt. And then we see in when the Muslims of Spain, the Christians, they went into the libraries, and they destroyed the books, they burned all of the books. So like this, you have quite a number of books that were just thrown, burned, thrown into the water. I mean, the Mongols, they threw all the books in the water. We hear about this, that the water became black with the ink of the books. And Second time this happened was in Andalus, where the Christians, they burned all of the Islamic books. They just left the medical journals and the medical books intact, and everything else they just burned. And this is very unfortunate. But regardless, there's a lot of makhtutat, there's a lot of manuscripts out there. This is 9/10 of our intellectual heritage. We should make dua that we see these books in the future. Islam is all about preservation of knowledge. I mean, there are books written just on taqiyudul ilm, on writing and the importance of writing. And this is why our scholars, they would make it a point to write as much as possible to preserve the edifice of Islam, to preserve the intellectual heritage of Islam. So there's lots to be gained. Universities nowadays, I mean, quite a number of universities throughout the world, they do teach Islamic theology, and some of them teach. I mean, they don't call it Islamic theology; they call it Middle Eastern studies. But in Middle Eastern studies, what they're reading is the development of hadith, the development of fiqh, Islamic law, how Islamic law impacted generations, how it impacted British law, how it impacted American law. Obviously, British law and American law, it has to be built on something. I mean, it doesn't make sense that they just conjure up something that comes to their head. So they did have a base to work from, and the base that they were working from was Islamic law. So British law, the base that they used was the law that the Indians had developed over so many centuries, because you had the Mughals over there, and before the Mughals you had quite a number of caliphates. You had people think that the Mamluk Caliphate and the Mamluks were people who were only in Egypt. They were an empire only in Egypt, but they were Mamluks in India as well. So, and this was the first. This was, I believe, they predate? No, they didn't predate the Mamluks of Egypt, but they were a Mamluk dynasty. There was a Mamluk dynasty in India. Many people, they don't know this, but the name escapes me right now. Who was the first Mamluk king of India? One of them was Iltutmish, and Iltutmish had a daughter by the name of Razia Sultana. So she was very competent, and she became the first empress of India. And she too, I think there's a masjid and a complex that she built in her name. Razia Sultana Masjid or something like that. I believe it's in Delhi, if I'm not mistaken, because that was the chair. That was where they ruled from present day where Delhi is. So the name, the first Mamluk king of India, completely, the name escapes me. If somebody knows it, just write it down on the live chat. But yeah, so they were a Mamluk king. So after the Mamluks of India, you have a number of dynasties. You have the Khilji dynasty or Khilji dynasty. You have the Tughlaq dynasty. Then you have the Lodi dynasty. You have the Sayyid dynasty. After the Sayyid dynasty, then you have the Mughal dynasty. And the Mughals, they were the last Islamic dynasty in India, after which the British came under the guise of trading, the East India British Company, or whatever it's called, and they subjugated the Indians, and they subjugated that region, and they spread their own. They proselytized the people of India. They spread their own teachings, and they completely, stole the riches of that region. They benefited immensely from that region, and this is what happens when there's colonization. So whenever there's colonization, people start to assume the identity of the colonizers. I saw one strange picture. I'm not sure if it was really strange, but it prompted me to comment. And so the picture was this Muslim guy. I forget which country it was. I think it was one of the countries that was colonized by the French. So a Muslim guy with a very large beard, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us all. And behind him was just a whole selection of different types of alcohol. And it prompted me to comment that, colonization, the gift that keeps on giving. That to me was a little, I found it funny, because we see the traces of this, and we see the influences of this, and what it does more than anything is that it takes us away from our heritage. And I think it's important that we, as Muslim parents, we should teach our kids the importance of our own language. They're going to learn English anyway. Me personally, being born and raised in this country, I can speak my mother tongue, and I lament that I can't read it and write it. But I think it's very important that we teach our kids our first language, the language that we were raised in, the language of our homes. And this is, for those who speak Farsi, they should teach their kids Farsi. For those who speak Urdu, they should teach their kids Urdu. For those who speak Arabic, they should make it a point to teach their kids classical Arabic. Take pride in the language. And it astonishes me that we don't speak, the Arabs of today, they speak a very diluted form of classical Arabic. Classical Arabic is just fantastic. Just to go through the Quran and understand why certain words are read the way they're read. This to me is just fascinating. It astonishes me and shocks me why anybody would resort to colloquial Arabic when there is classical Arabic. Classical Arabic, subhanallah, it sounds beautiful. This is something that we should keep in mind. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for all of us. We should try to speak our mother tongue, and we should try to understand it. There's a lot of ilm, there's a lot of knowledge in our own language. In Farsi, I know there's a lot of books. The language of the Mughal courts was Farsi, and a lot of books were written in Farsi. So we should try to, for those who speak Farsi, teach their kids Farsi. And Urdu, Gujarati, these are all languages. Our scholars, actually, a few of them, I believe they had also learned Sanskrit, which is an ancient language. And they learned it just so that they could better understand the books of Hinduism. So you have the Vedic books. This was in ancient Vedic. And then you have these Semitic languages as well, which are very interesting. A friend of mine sent me a resume of someone who trained in Semitic languages. So Semitic languages, you have Arabic, you have Hebrew. These are Semitic languages, and then you have languages such as Akkadian, Assyrian. These are all Semitic languages that were spoken in ancient Babylon. Ibrahim alayhi salam, he didn't speak Arabic. He spoke an ancient Semitic language. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best what language he spoke, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does speak about Babylon in the Quran, in the first juz. I think it's in the first or second juz, when he speaks about the angels Harut and Marut, that they descended upon Babylon, Babel, right? Bibabila, Haruta wa Marut. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does speak about Babylon, and it is referenced in the Quran. And this student of knowledge did an entire dissertation, I think, in University of Boston, on ancient Semitic languages and the languages that they would speak in ancient Babylon, where Ibrahim alayhi salam was from. So Ibrahim alayhi salam, he never spoke the Arabic language. As a matter of fact, his name too is not Arabic; it's Ajam. Ibrahim alayhi salam's the name Ibrahim. This is Ajam. It's not Arabic. Many people think it's Arabic, but it's not Arabic. It's something else. It's something else completely. And this comes in grammar. This comes in grammar, Arabic grammar. So that this is there's a reason why you will always see Ibrahim, Ibrahima or Ibrahimu. You will never see it as Ibrahimi. So you will never see it in the genitive. You will always see it in the nominative, or Ibrahima or the Ibrahimu. You will not see it Ibrahimi at all. So these are just some things that come to mind today. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I think I went over my time. I apologize. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us all understanding. If there are any questions, everyone knows where to find me. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for us. Allah make it a fruitful and beneficial Ramadan for each and every single one of us. Jazakumullahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.